In the world of real estate, what's happening today? Well, let me give you the Santa Clarita happenings and then we'll get into the rest of it. But a lot of people are asking that question. A lot of people online are very much interested as to the state of real estate, what's going to be happening throughout the rest of this year. Everything seemed to be just wonderfully lovely. Buyers were starting to come out and peek out a little bit and check out the real estate market. And then all of a sudden, wham, the economy started to change. We started to see the government getting involved in things that, well, the government gets involved in. And that started to slow down the people's role out there, the people that were looking to purchase real estate. It slowed them down considerably. They're looking at interest rates. They're looking at the interest rates eking up. And agents, even in the groups that I'm in and these other places that I frequent, water cooler and such, they're talking about the same thing. It's an abysmal market. It's horrible. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And then some people are talking about going and getting real jobs, which is disconcerting. I did a real job for a very long time and I still work for people in real estate and I do consider that a real job, but I'm also not vacationing in Cancun every other week and showing off. So maybe it's a different kind of a standpoint. But looking at Santa Clarita Valley as a whole, we have seen the real estate market considerably slow down. We have less closings than we had last year at the same time. We also see interest rates are higher than they were last year at the same time. So people are looking at this trying to make a gauge as to whether, they should purchase now or continue renting or living with parents. The one thing that I'll explain to you with regard to real estate is you want to definitely marry the home, not the mortgage, but if you think that there's a possibility of prices coming down so you can take better advantage and your dollar will go further, then albeit, I don't think that's a problem at all. You just have to make sure that the data that you're using to establish this bet is really grounded in fact, not fiction. I don't represent home buyers. I represent home sellers, so I have no skin in this game. So I will tell you, if you are looking for a buyer's agent, I did that for 21 years of my 28-year career. I did represent both sides, sellers and buyers. But now I'm 100% a seller's only agent. You can see that I have a fair fixed fee, and that's how I function. Now, when you're looking for an agent as a real estate buyer, a couple things to think about. First off, how long has the agent been in the business? Real estate companies, they're going to tell you that it's very important what company they're backed by and how strong they are and that presence out there online. But in actuality, the playing field is absolutely level. If an agent has any kind of understanding of the digital world, they're able to find listings like everybody else can find. Now there's a little bit more nuance to it. If the real estate agents that you're trying to find to represent you are very, very good at the artificial intelligence game and they're able to go out there and use those prompts, prompt those systems in a specific way, looking at true real estate data, they might be able to come up with something very nouveau and actually create a prompt that's able to use existing real estate data, probably homeowner data, and make determinations as to which homeowner is most likely to list their house, and then make that introduction, which is just a fabulous type of operating method. If you have that type of agent, that's very valuable. I do know a few of those. So if you want that referral, more than happy. And of course, that referral makes me money, completely transparent. But ultimately, there are those agents out there. So when you're looking for one, maybe that's something to ask in your interview process. The other thing, of course, is cost. What does that fee look like? And there's value in the fee. Trust me on this. But you have a 90-day window, up to 90 days, when you do start working with a particular agent to agree to working with that agent. Now, it can be for every property you see, or it can only be for a specific type of property or a specific city or whatever. So this is called a buyer-broker contract or a buyer-broker agreement. It's something that's now mandated as being part of the rules whenever an agent is going to start showing a client real estate, start working for a client. So on there's going to establish a few things. Of course, this buyer-broker agreement, it's going to show on there exactly how long the term's going to be. And like I said, right now, as of the 23rd, right? We're at the 23rd of April, 2026. That time frame is 90 days. Of course, that can be extended and so on. And if you have an issue with anything, even I tell my sellers, if there's an issue and you're deciding that you want to change your plan, not sell your residence, whatever it may be, as long as we're not on contract with a buyer, and I put this in writing, we can cancel it. I'll eat the fees of everything that I paid, paying the photographer, paying for the virtual tour, paying for all those things, just the price of doing business. Some agents charge outside of their normal fee, their normal commission, because they're basing theirs on a percentage, and that's fine. You have to go with what makes you happy. But ultimately, as on the buyer's end of it, same thing should exist. There should be an exit clause from that. Now, I know I'm probably irritating a few people, but that might be something to ask. What's my exit clause? Because if the agent up front is, rainbow, sunshine, cotton candy, unicorns, and beautiful ponies, oh my God, it's perfect. But as time goes on, and maybe the agent starts wearing down and getting tired, maybe the agent isn't what you thought at the beginning. Well, you might have to have a coming to Jesus moment with the agent, have a conversation with him saying, and I would do this first. And I know the world has kind of moved past this accountability, confrontational thing, but what's the worst they're going to do? Are they going to beat you up? No, they're not going to beat you up. Are they going to get angry and cuss at you? Well, maybe that's probably about the worst thing they can do. But I would go to them and I would say, hey, listen, Joe, I appreciate you at the very beginning being a different Joe. But now you're completely off the, I can't say reservation, can I? I don't know. That's probably bad now. But you're off base. You're off kilter. You're not the same Joe that I hired in the beginning to represent me in the purchase of real estate. So what's wrong? Do you have something going on? Or did I do something wrong? Let's work this out, because I would really, you imagine how much respect is gained from that kind of a conversation. It's just lovely, but most people don't do it. They just say, hey, listen, I don't want to work with you anymore. I've changed my mind. And they find this a scapegoat and they try to write it up in that regard. Whatever your way. I'm not saying one way is better than the other. Yeah, I am actually. The way that's better is the confrontational way. But if you don't feel like that, you know what? You be you, and you just let them go. But they should have something up front that says, hey, listen, if I fall out of love with you, am I able to exit this contract and go find an agent that I truly do love? And they should be able to establish that, something in writing that you can thereby enforce later when they say, well, I don't remember. I'm not going to let you out of this. You have, good luck waiting 45 days because now you're just eating up whatever it is. All right. So watch out for that. So those are a couple things that I would look for when I'm looking for a buyer's agent. Now, as far as Santa Clarita today, we have 16 coming soon. 76 new listings have hit the market in the past 7 days. 69 properties have had their prices changed. This is very much typical in this type of market where you have interest rates going up. You have some buyer holdback just because of those interest rates. And again, like I said, if in fact you have to look at why you're buying. Why are you buying a house? Are you buying because everybody's telling you to buy one? Maybe that's not the best reason. But financially, if you're purchasing a residence and that one happens to be, you purchasing that residence is best for you every-wise, tax-wise, financial-wise, maybe emotionally wise, maybe family-wise, maybe that all fits really well. Then you need to look at the cost. And when you look at the cost, you need to also find out what type of deduction process there could be. So mortgage interest is an allowable tax deduction, period. Full stop. God, I hate that. Then you need to find out from your CPA what that looks like for you. Maybe for you it looks horrible. Maybe for you it doesn't make it worth it. Maybe for you it's better to wait. But if it is, mortgage interest is a tax deduction, well, that ties to that interest rate. So you buy the house, maybe you have just a larger deduction. When interest rates come down, if interest rates come down, then you do a refinance and then you proceed with your life happy and holy, and you saved yourself some money. And that extra amount you saved, you're not going to go buy donuts every week or go to Disneyland every week. You put that money back in to the principal of the mortgage, and thereby you'll start, shaving off those years. Instead of a 30-year fixed, it might get down to 20, depending on how much you have in, and depending on how much you put in, it can get even lower. So that's the advantage. You just use your money smart. Now, what did I say? Price changes 69, back on market 18, active under market. Active under contract properties 40, pending 40, and we have 52. So in escrow, we have 80 properties. We have 76 new properties hitting the market. So if you look at this week as a snapshot, you're going to see that there's a lot of properties that have been absorbed and that are currently in escrow. More properties are in escrow than properties that were added to the market at this point over the last 7-day track history. Now, I mentioned back on market properties. You have 18 of those. What is that, 20%-ish? So you have 20% of the properties that are in escrow actually have fallen out of escrow as well. If you're a buyer, here's another one. If you're a buyer and you happen to like a particular property, and this is going to happen. I don't care if you have Attila the Hun as your agent or Gandhi or whomever would fit well in that choice. Whomever it is, you're going to go out and you're going to see something. Maybe it's new on the market. Maybe they've entertained it in a pre-marketed way, because there are coming soon listings. SantaClaritaComingSoon.com, or your agent is how you get access to those. But because those listings are coming soon, maybe somebody was doing the due diligence, watching early, had their eye on it. Maybe they had one of those really good agents that is doing that follow-up and saying, oh my God, this one coming soon. Agent, when is this hitting the market? Oh, 21 days from now. Okay, please, my clients are very interested. And then that agent works up all the data, pulls all the comps, pulls everything, gets it to their client, talks to them about the area, talks to them about potential Mellarus that might be there, talks to them about the HOA fees, has them call the HOA, here's the phone number, call them and ask about your 15 dogs and 32 cats, have them just, get all the due diligence done, so when it does, or even before, they can fire off an offer. There's nothing said that you can't send an offer on a coming soon listing. And then addition, just make it dependent on them seeing the property in person. You've lost nothing at that point, because that deposit isn't made real until the contract's ratified. And that deposit isn't even real money anymore. Now it's just basically a promise. I'm going to deposit money within this amount of time after we have an agreement, ratified contract between all parties, after all the haggling and negotiation goes through. So once you have that, then that money becomes real. But up until that point, yeah, you can make this offer. And making an offer sight unseen, buying a property sight unseen, dependent on a third party that maybe you met, on some, you saw an agent that was active on Instagram or Facebook, or had somebody refer to you. Yeah, that's a bad choice. Not ever seeing that property and closing escrow, you got to see it, folks. If you're relocating from another state to California, which isn't happening as much as it used to, but if you are, during our present economy, you definitely want to come take that time and invest into it. So the agent should be able to time that pretty rationally. You should be able to come out and see it during maybe an inspection process. So then you can be there with the home inspector, ask every single question there is. There might be the case of a seller, and in some of the cases of the properties I list as a seller's only agent, you will see that some of the sellers do a pre-sale home inspection. So we have them hire a same type of home inspection that's actually is available to be hired by buyers. We have them go to the seller's house. We have them crawl through the whole thing, make all the recommendations. Maybe it comes up with certain things that the seller says, I'm not going to do anything with that. So they leave it, but it's documented. So now the buyer has everything. And the buyer, of course, is still going to hire their own home inspector. But when they go out there, more than likely, it's going to be very similar. Now, we always have a whose is bigger kind of a situation. So when you have a seller's pre-home inspection and that home inspector produces the report, usually I like to have that privy to the other home inspector. And then it's just wazoo nuts city. And if that one is the one with the insecurity complex, a lot of times there's going to be a lot more information, or the seller's home inspector they hired sucks and they just don't know what they're doing. But that's typically not the case. Usually you see that secondary report having a lot more information on it than the first one, but usually the information is not substantial. It's kind of nonsense. Cannon fodder, whale blubber, pillow talk. No, pillow talk probably doesn't work in that. But you see what I'm saying. So they'll go out there. The second one that the buyer hires, they look at that first report. They should also crawl through those disclosures that the seller filled out. That's something we like to get done early with the sellers. And now they look at that second report and they say, oh my gosh, there's a lot more here. The agent, worth their salt, is going to say, well, this is cosmetic. The big stuff, almost 100% of the time, unless it's something that's way outside of the inspector's purview, something that they have no idea of, but usually there's a recommendation. I see this. It's a problem, I'm sure. I just don't know how it's a problem. I think you need to hire this type of inspector, maybe a geological inspector or a foundational inspector or a roof inspector. Maybe the roof has almost gotten to the point past its functionality, that type of inspector. Maybe a plumbing inspector. Usually they're pretty good with the plumbing. They can see stuff that's leaking and maybe tell by water flow what might be clogged or not clogged. But anyway, I digress. So moving through the process, I think that's important to also pay attention to. But these properties do fall back on the market, and if you are paying attention or your agent's paying attention, you have an advantage. All right, where did we go? We went to pending 52 properties closed this week, and that kind of falls in line with the properties that have gone back on market versus the active on market properties. Pretty good. And then we have 9 properties expired. So these properties, pay attention, these properties didn't sell within the contractual time frame. How long is a property typically listed? Me, 180 days, 6 months. 6-month listing. Well, when you do something at a substantial amount, not a month, not 15 days, you allow for it to actually get an offer and close if it's priced strategically correctly. So you allow for that in that 6-month contract. You allow for some delays, but that's negotiable too. What I do is what I do. Maybe another agent will take a 2-day listing. I don't know. There's also agents out there that'll do pre-market stuff or off-market listings. A little nuance, just be wary that thing does exist. That is a real thing. And in some circumstances, I might be convinced to be able to do something like that. If you're not ready to have full public purview, kind of to test, but be wary testing. It just depends on the placement of that property. If it's placed correctly, if the agent has their wherewithal, has their salt, is able to put that property in front of a ton of eyeballs, the same type as if it's being syndicated through the multiple listing service, then you're probably good. You're going to attract those same buyers. Then the negotiation on the other side, if it's a seller's only agent you're dealing with, like me, and I don't know of anybody else, but I came up with that. It's trademarked and all. But if you come to a seller's only agent, I'll just give myself an example. Then when that buyer comes and contacts me, that's lovely. But I'm still not going to represent them. They need to go get their own agent. And then we can negotiate whatever that agent is going to ask for regard to the property. A lot of buyer's agents, they're adjusting their commission strategy in order to make sure offers are accepted, because they know if the seller sees, what I charge as a seller's only agent, they see the buyer's agent wanting twice that much because they're going with the typical commission model. Well, a lot of times, depending on how many offers coming in, I mean, if it's the only one, maybe they'll respond, maybe they'll negotiate, but that does cut into the sellers what they're making. Now, the buyer is capable, and if the buyer is capable and willing, they can pay their buyer's agent whatever that fee happens to be. And some offers we get, the buyers aren't even asking for a commission to be paid for their agent. They're going to pay it out of pocket. All right, so we have 9 that expired, didn't sell within those contractual timeframes. I would probably bet almost 100% that's because of price. Well, everything kind of boils down to price. But at some point, there could be something that could be changed in the listing to be able to have people write more offers, to give it more exposure. Maybe there's something wrong that the seller's agent, the listing agent, didn't or wasn't upfront with the seller about. Maybe they didn't see something. Maybe they're not from the area. Maybe they don't have experience. Maybe they're not as refined, knowledgeable, experienced as somebody else, and somebody else might have gone and said, well, this is the problem right here. If you fix this, we're going to be good. And there's a lot of examples of that. That is a real thing. So if your property expired, maybe it's just simply something you didn't see. Maybe somebody went in there so hungry to get your business, they didn't give you the full information that you potentially required to list the house. Is it their fault? They probably didn't know. Is it your fault for hiring them? You probably didn't know. But it's a good test case. We haven't seen properties come down substantially enough to really cause big debits in what you might make as far as equity goes. So definitely, I think if you wanted to sell it, probably worth another shot. It might be something as simple as changing a couple things. And that cost might not be as much as you might think. All right, cancel listings 9. Sellers saying, you know what, I've had it. I don't want to sell anymore. Those time frames are very long on market, 90 days, 100 days, 130 days, 180 days in some cases. Some agents are pulling down year listing contracts. If somebody wants to cancel in that time, I just got to know. And we can't be in process with a buyer. If you're in contract with a buyer and a seller wants to cancel, if the buyer agrees, you're golden. But a lot of times, buyers have already spent some money to be able to buy that house, the home inspection, termite inspection, the lender appraisal fee. That could be, a couple grand and a chunk of change, $1,500, $2,000 in those fees. Buyer pays that out of pocket. Now the seller changes their mind midstream. Yeah, There could be legal issues. Well, there could be legal issues with everything, but that's the case. It could happen, especially if the seller's trying to push and the buyer is not in agreement to let them out of contract. Understand that. All right, so canceled 9, hold 13. What's the hold status? COVID. Somebody gets sick. Somebody gets COVID. Somebody has some kind of a medical emergency. They put the property on hold so it's not shown anymore. That's the best use case. Not best use case is, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed with all the offers. The seller's tired of showing. Yeah, we're not in this to lose. Don't be tired. Be strong. As far as agents goes, don't be overwhelmed. You should have systems in place to be able to take care of this. So it's all organized. If you're still working out of a filing cabinet and a duffel bag, maybe you need to step it up just a little bit. I know you're still having your picture on your card. You're sitting on the phone with all your that rock jewelry that people go to Vegas wear. All right, withdrawn properties 6. These are properties that have been excluded from the market. They could be within contract with a current agent. My dumbbells are over there. I should move those. They could be under contract with another agent, with an agent currently, but they've been withdrawn. Hopefully they'll list again. If you see that list and it's something you're interested in, that's a good one for a follow-up for a solid buyer's agent. They can call, say, listen, I have a client that's interested. Maybe you can work out some kind of off-market deal with those properties. Nobody else wanted to buy it apparently, or maybe it was withdrawn for some other reason, but maybe you can work that out. All right, that's your update. I hope it works. Please, sellersonlyagent.com. Today is the 23rd. Where's all the numbers? Today's the 23rd of April, 2026. It's Thursday. That's all I got. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for watching. Be well. Welcome to the show.